2015 paper, Roberts spoke about how tattoos constitute a form of body modification used to express meaning. You may not think your own tattoos or your best friend's tattoos are that deep, but they do reveal more than you think, according to science. By referring to the sociological literature on tattoos, this video essay will argue that through embodiment, which we'll break down, tattoos represent the lifestyles and/or entities a person is loyal to, both reflecting and applying, for better or worse, social statuses to the individual. This video is a type of informal meta-analysis, which basically means I found all the studies I possibly could before I got bored on why people get tattoos, and then I compiled it into video form for your viewing pleasure. This is what we do here, so subscribe if you like the vibe. And the answer is yes. After watching this video, you definitely will be able to read people with tattoos better, as well as understand how you are potentially being perceived if you have tattoos yourself. My name is Cass, and I make video essays from a sociological and anthropological perspective. I also make slow living content from time to time. I'm a small channel, so if you can and would like to support me, I have a Ko-fi linked below. And liking and subscribing acts as positive reinforcement, which I always appreciate. As always, if you think I missed something or got something wrong, let me know in the comments because I love to learn. Chapter 1, Embodiment. Embodiment means to make something physical or tangible. If we're talking about the human body, the anthropologist Thomas Csordas argues that the concept of embodiment situates the body as both an object, able to be looked at and tangibly perceived, and a subject, an entity that is both experiencing the world via the body, as well as being influenced and experienced by society. Regarding tattoos, the body is an object with which the subject has inscribed symbols or words that reflect their subjective experience of society. To be a person means to experience life as both a subject with a body and an object, being a body. I'll give you a minute to let all of that marinate. So tattoos expose this interface. It implies the explicit experience of this duality, you as subject and object. You might be thinking, well, anytime we dress the body, put makeup on, do anything to our hair, we are experiencing this duality. And you're right. So what makes tattoos so special? The skin acts as the site of this dynamic/duality between the internal and external, subject and object, mind and body, the self and the rest of the world. By actively marking this interface, the skin, tattoos take on subliminal meaning and subtext that everybody engages with without even realizing it. And that's both whether you have tattoos or not. Tattoos provide the intersection between the body as subject and object, because the subject must choose to inscribe the body and thus experience itself as an object. As such, the skin, as an interface between the individual and society, gives tattoos a unique site of expression and communication. When we tattoo our body, what we aim to capture in the form of symbols and words are the ephemeral introspection, ideas, passions, and likes of the subject within. We use tattoos to make the subject that inhabits the body known in some way. Even if it's only to say, the consciousness in this body likes this kind of design. But spoiler, even if that's the only reason you got your tattoo, that's not all it's actually communicating. Chapter 2, the social construct of self. If tattoos are communicating information about us to wider society, what are they saying? First, we have to understand that we can only conceptualize of an identity and self via the backdrop of the culture and environment we have been exposed to. As a species, we tend to arrange ourselves into groups and impose social status as a result. E.g., you are Australian, you are woman, you are rich, you are poor, etc. It's through this lens that we position ourselves and our identities within the world, and the tattoos we get reflect this lens. This means the social status symbolism of the tattoos we get shifts across cultures and societies. How tattoos are perceived in one culture is going to be different to another, and the types of tattoos and placements are going to differ as well. There are going to be 4 main categories of meaning in this video. Let me know if the science has it right and yours fits into one of these categories, or if you think the science has it wrong. Remember, a tattoo can fit into multiple categories, and there's probably more categories that I haven't explored. Chapter 3, Category 1, expressing/communicating loyalty to an entity. Sounds deep. In their 2009 paper, Orend and Gage argue that since a person's social status will determine the sorts of businesses and logos they align themselves with, corporate logo tattoos act as status symbols, communicating to others the social status and thus lifestyle of the individual. One respondent in the study had a tattoo of a racetrack logo to signify his passion and love for the sport and industry. Another explained how his Iron Man tattoo was a commemoration to his first triathlon, symbolising hardcore athletes who live an active lifestyle. Another has the logo of an alcoholic drink to represent a lifestyle of having a good time and people who enjoy being an alcoholic or a drunk. And another has an Apple tattoo to express his status as a proud Apple user. What all of these examples have in common is that beyond their status of affiliation, their logo tattoos actually reflect a perceived social status that goes along with the lifestyle that the tattoos embody. For example, an Apple tattoo implies a certain level of wealth that allows for the accumulation of Apple products, thus applying social status to the individual. One 2020 study by Maldonado Estrada found that in Brooklyn, America, religious tattoos act as devotional material to convey a man's communal values and allegiance to his community and its rituals. These were tattoos that reflect the dance of the Giglio feast, usually depicting the Giglio statues that the men in the community build and labour over together in preparation for the ritual. In this community, adorning the body with tattoos of the saints, Giglio, and other devotional symbols solidifies and proclaims a person's status of belonging within the community. Moreover, the status of lifter, or the highest honour in the community, number one capo, and one's desire to claim these titles are expressed via these tattoos of devotion, meaning getting tattoos referencing the Giglio feast and one's participation in it can symbolise a desire to gain such titles. So religion can be an obvious one. If you have any sort of religious symbol on you, most people are going to interpret that as someone who has some sort of religious or spiritual belief and perhaps belongs to a religious community. Even if your tattoo mocks these symbols, you are expressing a belief, such as that you don't believe in religion or maybe don't take religion very seriously. Tattoos that express loyalty to a larger entity, whether that be a religion or corporation, act as membership branding that communicates to society the embodiment of social statuses relevant to that entity, with the aim to claim and endorse said entity. Logo tattoos are particularly interesting. I wrote so much more on this topic, specifically around capitalism, branding, and ignorant tattoos, but I had to take it out of my script, so let me know if you'd like to see a video on that. Chapter 4, Category 2, Subculture Membership. Subculture membership is proclaimed by possessing symbols that make up the subculture's aesthetic. I made a video on the dangers of internet aesthetics if you're interested in that. But one way of possessing these symbols is by getting them tattooed on the body. The most obvious subculture to look at here is, of course, the tattoo artist subculture itself. In their 2022 paper, Tonkovic and Basic studied contemporary society in Croatia and found that the social status of those who tattoo and are tattooed has changed primarily due to the appearance of tattoos in various professional and social settings. They found that being a tattoo artist is increasingly associated with higher educational status, and very few come from the working class, despite the occupation not needing a formal education. Status among tattoo artists is determined by experience and expertise. Those who have refined and perfected their own style to the degree that it is recognizable and sought out are granted more status by both serial tattoo seekers and apprentices looking to become tattoo artists themselves. The tattoos a tattoo artist possesses may also impact this status because low-quality tattoos are associated with scratches, which are amateur tattoo enthusiasts who have no formal training, use templates, and lack refined aesthetic. Separate to the tattoo artist subculture, you can have tattoos that symbolize any subculture or even an aesthetic, like Y2K or cottagecore, and it would act as cultural capital within that subculture or aesthetic. Maybe you think you got a specific tattoo because you like the design, but if others recognize the aesthetic of the design as belonging to a certain subculture, that information about your taste and preference is being communicated, maybe even your affiliation with the subculture. Accessibility to some aesthetics and subcultures are wealth dependent or relative to other social constructs, such as ethnicity, gender identity, or sexual preferences, which would add additional layers of information. Going back to embodiment, this means the subject within, as in the person, has intentionally used their skin to communicate this information, whether consciously or subconsciously. And this creates interpretive avenues in which social status can be applied. Chapter 5, Category 3, Community Affiliation. This refers to tattoos that are acquired in order to communicate specific messages of affiliation to a specific community of people. This is where traditional cultural tattoos fit, but there are also other tattoos that communicate specific things to specific people. A 2006 paper by Va recounts their experience in Auckland, New Zealand, in which they observed Samoan migrants getting tattooed via traditional Samoan techniques. It was explained to Va that being tattooed is to acquire a complete identity. That is, traditional Samoan tattoos express meaning to other Samoans relevant to their cultural tradition and indicate ethnic status and cultural involvement. In contrast to ethnic communities, in their 2018 paper, Sundberg and Gelman explored the concept of tattoos as documents among Russian prisoners, as well as the messaging they provide to others within the criminal community. Specific tattoo symbols associated with this community refer to prison status, but interestingly, they can also refer to a desire to leave or not leave the community. Likewise, the fact that these tattoos express criminal proclamation and affiliation allows members outside the community to apply specific social statuses to these people, whether they understand the nuances of the symbols or not. Many people who are not part of these communities are starting to get these tattoos tattooed on their own bodies without understanding the meaning. Similarly, in the rural area of, hopefully I pronounced this right, Xishuangbanna, China, another community is using tattoos to convey specific statuses, lifestyle, and messages to members of their community. In their 2019 paper, Davey and Zhao explained that traditional tattoos, which give specific meanings and magical purposes, yes, magical, are no longer safe to use because their purposes are no longer needed in society. However, these ideas of magic and purpose are still applied to the contemporary symbols that are tattooed on the body today, and specific symbols are used that are understood by the community to have specific meanings. This makes me think of how in Australia I'm seeing angel number tattoos or tattoos that symbolize protection in Wicca or other religious communities. You likely don't know what these tattoos actually mean unless you're within that community or subculture. While unusual to compare, all three communities, the Samoan community, the Russian prisoners, and the Chinese community, are all using specific symbols and semiotics to communicate messages understood by the community that outsiders may not understand. The embodiment of such tattoos signal affiliation with the community, simultaneously communicating status and meaning to those within the community, as well as lifestyle to those outside the community. To widen the lens further, for outsiders who don't know the meanings of these symbols, social status may still be attributed to a person by virtue of choosing to have a tattooed body, irrespective of what message the tattoo is portraying. Category 4, Gender Perceptions. A lot of authors talk about how gender discrimination occurs for both women who are tattoo artists and women who have tattoos. In their 2022 paper, Csordas found that women who have visible tattoos are predictably more egalitarian, sexually open, and defiant of traditional gender roles. At the same time, Csordas found that men generally have a negative perception of the sexual and political statuses of visibly tattooed women, perceiving them as stronger and more independent. This also correlates to an additional finding in Csordas' paper, that tattooed women face unfair discrimination and stigmatization in comparison to men, like men in general. This, of course, further negatively impacts a woman's social status under patriarchy. So let's talk about men who are tattooed. Interestingly, greater popularity and acceptance tends to be granted to tattooed men over both non-tattooed men and tattooed women. In a 2002 paper by Atkinson, these notions were echoed, referencing findings on Canadian women who get tattooed. According to Atkinson, women in general are well aware of their outsider social status under the patriarchy and the subsequent expectations to modify their bodies for the male gaze. In their study, 2 female cohorts responded to this knowledge in polarizing ways. One cohort uses tattoos to challenge these depictions of femininity, in effect actively aiming to avoid the male gaze. The second cohort uses tattoos as a form of body modification, much like cosmetic surgery and dieting, to conform to gender norms by deliberately seeking and appealing to the male gaze. I want to make it clear that this is just one study and obviously aren't the only two reasons a woman may get a tattoo. When I was reading this paper though, it made me think of the hyper-feminine tattoo styles I see on Pinterest all the time. Are these appealing to the male gaze, or are they embodiments of femininity, apathetic to the male gaze, maybe even curated for the female gaze? What's with all the gazing? I basically organise my entire life via Pinterest, and one of the boards I have is a tattoo board. And it's here that I started making this observation. There are tattoo styles like fine line and micro-realism that lend itself to feminine designs like flowers and vines, for example, but there are other things going on as well. Specifically the white ink tattoos, the freckle tattoos, and the dainty tattoos that are deliberately placed in areas that emulate jewellery placement. White ink tattoos get a bad rap because they tend to heal even lighter and sometimes end up fading to the point where you can't see the design or into a colour that looks like a scar. But through the lens of tattoos being a form of communication, white tattoos exist within the space between having a tattooed body and not having a tattooed body, which is very strategic in a patriarchal society that negatively perceives tattooed women. Freckle tattoos simultaneously draw attention to and away from a person's beauty spots as a way of enhancing your own natural features, which is a very feminine thing to do. This sort of language is used a lot in the makeup space, for example. Dainty tattoos that are intentionally placed to emulate or make a nod to jewellery is also an example of this. In the tattoo world, they're called floating tattoos, which have traditionally been controversial because a lot of tattoo artists used to refuse to put tattoos on a person's hand or neck, for example, until you have a full sleeve or a full chest. It just wasn't considered proper tattoo etiquette, and some tattoo artists today still follow these rules. Chapter 6, The Living Autobiography. The skin is the site of life, the interface between ourselves and the rest of the world. The impact that life has is worn physically on the skin in wrinkles and scars and discoloration. They are the involuntary signs of life, and how it arrives, when it arrives, and what it looks like is largely out of our control. And since women are judged more harshly for the signs of life lived, the voluntary contribution of marks and symbols on the skin, whatever they be, can be imbued with intentional meaning and used to counter this narrative as a sort of rebellious celebration of the skin and life lived. Tattoos constitute a site of cultural expression, drawing boundaries and/or alignments between the self, society, communities, and others, providing what Schildkraut in his 2004 paper described as a living autobiography. I would add to this by saying this autobiography is made up of the interplay between both our involuntary marks, like wrinkles and scars, as well as voluntary marks, like our tattoos. Because tattoos can be perceived and sought out for a number of reasons and exist as interface between individual and the rest of the world, they serve a role in cultural discourse, expressing individual perceptions of subjective experiences. And that's the end of the video.